we are going to talk about, of course, Mark of the Beast. We're going to talk about nano diamonds. We're going to talk about nano dust identity, hyperledger blockchains, a blockchain phone, Amazon wanting to set up a hand scan identity payment system, credit card in a hand, all kinds of good stuff. Great. Thank you, guys. All right, thumbs up. Let's get right into the scripture. Make sure that I have the music off this time. Hopefully it's not playing. Okay, again, very familiar scripture. We always use the familiar ones and then put them in a modern context. Revelation 13:17. So no one could buy or sell unless he had the mark, the name of the beast, or the number of its name. Now, I have probably the largest number of tabs open that I've ever attempted on a live stream, so please bear with me. I'm going to be jumping around quite a bit here. But to put that in context, let's read a little bit more from verse 16. And the second beast required all people, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. Okay, bearing that in mind, let us jump. And I'm going quickly tonight because I have a lot to cover. I sent quite a few articles to you before the live stream. This one from CNBC. Amazon reportedly wants to turn your hand into a credit card. Technology giant Amazon is working to allow customers to connect their credit card information to their hands, the Wall Street Journal reported. Let's get an image of what is going on at Amazon up here on the screen. I'm going to show you the actual patent on this. I have a lot of things open here. So I'm going to leave this up. This is a diagram from the actual patent on what Amazon is working on. Okay? And we'll put a few more up there, but that'll just get us started as we're reading. The company has reportedly begun working with Visa on testing out the terminals and has discussed the project with MasterCard, JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and Synchrony Financial. Amazon has already filed a patent for a non-contact, that's the thing to bear in mind, big takeaway, non-contact biometric identification system that features a hand scanner to produce a picture of the person's palm. Okay? You'll recall we've covered about 2 years ago the opening of Amazon Go, which is basically a fully automated retail establishment. And you get scanned as you come in, and when you leave with your items, those items have already been scanned and charged to your account that's on record. Okay? This was preceded by about 3.5 years ago, the purchase of Whole Foods by Amazon. Okay, so now they're rolling this out. I stated 3 years ago that the purpose for the purchase of Whole Foods by Amazon was to gain the data, the customer data, the transactional data, in order to then build out what we're seeing now with Amazon Go. Okay? So here's an image of a hand, just kind of a generic one, but gives you the idea of this touchless scanning process. Okay? We're going to get into talking about a subject that we've also covered extensively, both in Entangled Magazine and the live streams. Nano diamonds, nano dust, dust identity is the name of the company. So that's kind of where we're headed here. Technology giant Amazon is working to allow customers to connect their credit card information to their hands so that they can scan for purchases with their palms at checkout areas in physical stores. Okay? While Amazon's plan is in the early stages, the company has reportedly begun working with Visa on testing out the terminals. The company previously filed a patent for a non-contact biometric identification system that features a hand scanner to produce a picture of a person's palm. Okay, you can read the balance of this, but sent this off to you so that you were able to read it in its entirety. Again, I'm going to skip through very quickly because we're building a picture here. We are building a picture of the Mark of the Beast system. We've talked about blockchain being the infrastructure of the blockchain, of the Beast system. We're going to be talking about hyperledger blockchain technology. So we're moving along in our advancement. You've got the basics down on blockchain. You understand the blockchain system as it applies to building out the infrastructure for all of the components of the Beast system to come together. What we're beginning to provide to you now are detailed examinations of those components that all plug into that infrastructure blockchain system. Okay, this is the way the world is going. This is going to completely envelop the world. This will be in conjunction with the single global currency, Libra. This will be the only way that data is exchanged. Data generated, transmitted, retransmitted, accessed, sorted, and utilized by end users is through the blockchain. That is the central focus of the Beast system. Okay. Let us go to something that I sent to you just before the live stream, and this will kind of reach back about, I want to say 4 or 5 months, where we first began to talk about the nanodiamonds in relation to a company by the name of Dust Ledger and Dust Identity, specifically Dust Identity. Here's a little tidbit that comes out from Dust Identity, and we have said before, Dust Identity provides that physical connection to the world of data. I've often said you cannot separate the physical from the spiritual. Well, bear that in mind when I make that statement that Dust Identity using nanodiamonds, nanodust, makes the physical connection to the digital realm. And also bear in mind that the digital realm, the binary realm of zeros and ones, traces its origins all the way back to the dark mantic art of geomancy. So this is the physical connection to the spiritual through nanodiamonds. Who would have thought? So here's a little tidbit. Unclonable serialization. And I'll unpack that for you in just a moment. Dust, meaning the name of the company, is a durable fingerprint based on the random configuration of quantum engineered nanodiamonds. Dust brings unparalleled security through an unclonable serialization space. And here's a new number for you. We have to make a new t-shirt, folks. An unclonable serialization space with more than 10 to the 230th power of unique identifiers. Kind of makes 65,536 possible combinations of geomantic figures pale in comparison. You'll recall that the exponent 230 represents the number of zeros that you have when you are multiplying 10 by 230 exponentially. That means after the number 10, you have 230 zeros. You might as well call this an infinite number, as we have identified before when we were talking about Google's claim of quantum supremacy and the doubling of the doubling of the exponential, meaning actually a quaternary multiplication process of the number of numbers, the number of integers after the decimal point, resulting from the doubling of the doubling by Google's quantum processing chip, comprised of qubits, quantum bits, which are themselves zeros and ones, tracing their origins to geomancy, that they were astonished at Google that it was continuing to double and double the doubles exponentially to an infinite quantity of integers after the decimal point. We're seeing that here with the unclonable serialization. What that means is that there are 10 to the 230th power of possible combinations of nanodiamonds, nanodust. When they say quantum engineered, it refers to something that I'm going to take you to right now that we covered in Thursday's jam-packed live stream. We packed a lot of technology into Thursday. Remember, we talked about this little guy, the carbon-boron cages that are trapping a strontium atom, referring to this as a super diamond. Now, if we go back to dust identity and their nanodiamonds, what makes their nanodiamond so unique is it has a void, it has a space in the diamond. So the diamond is this cage, because diamonds are made of carbon. The cage has a void which can receive, by way of a laser impulse, a 0 or a 1. They call it a nitrogen vacancy defect for storing and then the retransmission of data. And as long as that cage is intact, that diamond is intact, so too is the data. And this has always been my premise, as I said extensively on Thursday. This has always been my premise, that if you want to build a universal computer, you must first build that computer following the geometry of the universe itself. Okay? We're going to go to Hyperledger, and I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, and then I'll start backfilling again. But Hyperledger's logo looks very much like my 600-cell tetrahedron, which is what I consider to be the true model of the universe. And therefore, if you are going to build a universal quantum computer, you must build it in the configuration of the 600-cell tetrahedron, which is the model of God's universe, beginning with a single tetrahedron. Okay? So again, we go back to the cage and we look at the 600 compared to the cage. Now this is a simplistic version, but contained within the 600 cell is this simplistic version of the cage. C60 carbon is built out of tetrahedrons into what is called a Buckminster fullerene. We've covered this many times. We have new patrons, so I always have to kind of backstep a little bit and fill in things so that people can get caught up with us. But this is where they're heading, building a universal computer. But right now what we're focused on is the mark of the beast as it relates to these nanodiamonds. Okay? Let me see if I can get back to, I have a lot of things open in my live streaming software, so give me an opportunity here to get these guys organized here. I think we used this last week. This is the super diamond, okay? These are the cages all arranged together, and I related that to the microtubules within the human neuron. In this case, what I would ask you to do is envision these as nanodiamonds, because these are carbon cages, so we can use these as a representation of the nanodiamond from dust identity. Again, dust identity saying that they are able to have unique combinations of these cages, of these nanodiamonds, unique combinations, serialized. Meaning that when you serialize, you put something in a specific pattern. You gather the cages, the carbon cages, the nanodiamonds together in a unique pattern. Now, this pattern can be generated in a random fashion or in a specific pattern. But more often than not, it's done in a random fashion, thus rendering that random distribution, the dust of nanodiamonds, on a product, on a component, on a shipping container, on virtually anything. Nanodiamonds can be applied topically on the surface, embedded in the material itself, mixed in the material itself, or even injected. Okay? Because we're dealing with the nanoscale, you can, most nanodiamonds, if you will, are going to operate between 10 and 200 nanometers, a billionth of a meter. Most injectables are going to be around 100 to 150 nanometers. But in my scenario of the dormant nanoparticles comprising DNA, which I believe when those dormant nanoparticles are triggered by 5 Wi-Fi signals, they will begin a replication of a third strand of DNA, which will then manifest physically, outwardly on the body, on the hand and on the forehead, as the actual mark of the beast. Where we're headed in the meantime is on the body are these unclonable serialized nanodiamond, nanodust marks on humans, and we won't even know that we have these marks. I'm not talking about making the decision to take the mark of the beast. I'm talking about the fact that nanodust is proliferating in our environment. If we think about our supply chain environment, which we've covered extensively, our foods, our products that are transported in the supply chain and end up at your retail establishment, and then we purchase them and take them into our home. We are bringing into our home, and it's already being sprayed in the atmosphere as well, nanodiamonds. And this is only going to continue to increase. And this is what I mean. We will have on the body, on the surface, topically, also inside our bodies due to ingestion and inhalation and absorption, nanodiamonds throughout our bodies. So if you will, there is a mark of the beast system that is already in place. Now there is a moral decision that has to be made to take the mark of the beast, but we have to define that in the modern context of taking the mark of the beast. Certainly, in my opinion, it has to be a conscious moral decision, fully aware that you are taking a mark that allows you to operate in the beast system. Will it be told to a person, identified to a person that it's the beast system? No. But you see, people have been warned about the mark of the beast, and they've chosen to ignore it to whatever degree, to whatever fashion, to whatever they ascribe the discussion, the preaching concerning the mark of the beast. Most people have chosen to disavow the importance of that decision. And so most will take the mark, no matter really how it's presented to them. And that's why it's so important that we here understand that we need to pass the information on as to those implications, because as you well know, taking the mark condemns one to no longer being found in God's book of the living, the book of life. Because when we interpret that in a modern context of understanding about DNA modification and DNA replication, we know that the free will decision to take the mark changes your DNA. And because the DNA is changed, and it is permanent, that change, you are no longer found by God to be in the book of life, meaning you are no longer his creation. You're an abomination. The person I'm addressing is the person taking the mark. We who refuse to take the mark of the beast, our DNA remains intact. There is no spontaneous replication of a third strand of DNA. We do not have a mark of the beast on our body, but we are sealed on the forehead. Again, an outward manifestation that our DNA is of the original design, the original construct by God himself. I believe these to be concurrent events at that point in God's plan. But what we're examining tonight is the technology that arises from the pit of hell. Make no bones about it. From the pit of hell. Again, we always use the touch point of geomancy and the dark arts, the forbidden knowledge, the mantic arts, as our primary touch point in our discussion of these technologies we examine having their origins in the pit of hell. It's forbidden knowledge because it's forbidden by God our Father so as to protect us. We don't want our DNA changed. We want to be found in the book of life. Yet throughout the world, we are seeing this mad rush, and it is literally a mad rush, to implement these technologies that are separating us from God. And it's not just DNA. This dust identity, these nanodiamonds, this unclonable serialization, results in a unique pattern of nanodiamonds on a product or on our bodies that cannot be copied. It's unclonable. Thus, it is a unique identifier. And that's outwardly identifiable. That can be identified electromagnetically using microwaves to scan you. It can be done using pulsed lasers, green lasers, to identify the pattern of the diamonds that are virtually embedded in your skin and be able to identify you. There's no way, just like your fingerprints, certainly your fingerprints can be etched away using mild acids like muriatic acid. You can remove your fingerprints. And yes, facial recognition patterns, there are ways to circumvent these things. But there's no way to circumvent nanodiamonds embedded in your skin. And there is no way to copy. So these are serialized, unclonable serialization space with more than 10 to the 230th power of unique identifiers. Now let's talk about unique identifiers for a moment. In the context that something I've been sharing for over 3 years now, and that's the Sentient World Simulation, the SWS, in which in the software you are given a unique identifier. First of all, you're identified in ones and zeros as a node within the computer system of the SWS. Second of all, you're given a unique avatar, and you've heard me talk about the avatar in the SWS. Well, here it is right here, folks. Been talking about this for 3 years, and here it is now. unclonable serialization space with more than 10 to the 230th power of unique identifiers. That is an avatar constructed of nanodiamonds, nanodust, and it's unclonable. This is the beast system. This is part of the mark of the beast. I think that there is a combination of the unique identifier provided by nanodiamonds and then the triggering of your dormant nanoparticles resulting in a third strand of DNA in combination resulting in that physical mark of the beast on your hand or on your forehead if you take the mark of the beast. Conversely, the seal, God's seal for God's children, is on our forehead. So let me read just a little bit here from Dust Identity. It says, trust your supply chain. The Dust Ledger Service, now that is blockchain, and this is something we published in past issues of Entangled Magazine and we've talked about, but I'll review it with you. Anytime you hear or read the word ledger, L-E-D-G-E-R, ledger, that is blockchain. That blockchain is a distributed ledger system. Okay? So, this is going to segue us into hyperledger blockchain platforms. And I'm going to take apart hyperledger for you in just a moment because we've talked about the basics of blockchain. Now we're going to step it up a degree and go to hyperledger blockchain. The Dust Ledger Service is a secure interface to the hyperledger blockchain platform. The service provides the physical digital binding. Okay, let's stop right there. You cannot separate the physical from the spiritual. Here they're talking about the binding of the physical to the digital. And Kathleen and I have defined the digital in the context of our discussions of geomancy. Okay? Because geomancy is 0 and 1, which our whole technological society is built around. Okay, let's back up just a bit. The service provides the physical digital binding to track and secure products and parts across the end-to-end value chain. Let me just make sure I put another graphic up here for you, and then we'll continue. We'll go ahead and we'll use this. This is where we're headed, so we're moving into hyperledger as we discuss this. So I'll just leave this up here for you. The physical digital binding to track and secure products and parts across the end-to-end value chain. It enables association of digital records with specific items and global traceability. Dust technology provides highly secure, unique identifiers and is tamper evident. It is scalable to components of almost every size and shape and can be distributed easily without risk throughout your global supply chain. Folks, this cannot be cloned. It cannot be hacked. If there is an attempt to tamper, it reveals that attempt to tamper with the nanodiamond pattern. And I've said that these can be randomly distributed. So we've got 10 to the 230th power of possible patterns of diamonds distributed. Let's just focus on the human body. Okay, forget about products and foods and whatever else. Let's just focus on us. There's, for all intents and purposes, an infinite number of different patterns of distributed nanodiamonds on our bodies. If you disturb that, it's obvious. This is unhackable, unclonable. Now, when we go to talking about quantum mechanics, particle physics, and quantum computing, we've made a big thing about talking about pattern recognition, but more importantly, we've talked so much about the Boltzmann machine and stochastic random number generation within specifically quantum computing. Now, this happens in particle physics. It happens in the broader application of quantum mechanics. It is all based on probabilities. Probabilities that are produced by way of patterns, random patterns. These are all integrated. When we talk about the fact that quantum mechanics is based on probabilities, it is based upon pattern recognition within those probabilities. Pattern recognition of quantum particles. We're talking about the same type of random number generation, now 10 to the 230th power of random combinations, random number generation, which traces itself all the way back again to geomancy, because it is based on combinatorial optimization, the operating system of quantum computing. It is based upon random number generation. That randomness comes from an unskilled person, not a diviner who's trained, who's educated in the interpretation of random patterns, but someone who is seeking an answer is producing random dots in the sand. Now, it doesn't have to be in sand, il-al-ramal from the Arabic, but the origins, the Arabic origins, the Mesopotamian origins of geomancy, the African origins of geomancy are based upon sand, and it is placing randomly dots in the sand. This is where all this is traceable to. Nothing new under the sun. And I keep repeating this about geomancy because we keep seeing more and more evolutions of geomancy in the modern time, in the modern technologies. So when you think about il-al-ramal, the science of the sand, the random number generation of divinatory practice of geomancy, it's exactly the same thing as what I'm presenting here with the random patterns, 10 to the 230th power of random combinations of diamonds. That's the mark of the beast, in combination with what I said about the third strand of DNA. This is the mark of the beast right here in front of you. Forget about RFID chips being implanted in the hand. Not going to happen. The logistics would prohibit it. It's over 7 billion people on the planet. Can't do it. You can do it with this, nanodiamonds, distributed everywhere in the environment, and it's only increasing in its quantity and density. Now, let me take you back to something that I began saying again about 3 years ago, and that is the granularity of data. That means the density of the data. We can relate that granularity of data to the granularity of the nanodiamonds, the density of the diamonds in our environment. This is the beast system, plain and simple. Okay? So now we have Amazon setting the stage, making it convenient. Remember, everything today is marketed around convenience. Amazon, now a $1 trillion company. I just read about this a few days ago. $1 trillion company. What is it based on? How did they get there? Convenience. that has a ripple effect all the way through our everyday walk of life. Occasionally I get emails from people who ask, where's the relevancy of all this high tech that you talk about? You go deep into explaining, the technologies, the quantum this and the quantum that. How is that relevant to our everyday walk of life? And I always try to anticipate those questions and try to address it preemptively. Well, here it is, Amazon Go. Scanning your hand. And what provides you that unique identifier? Well, right now, they're scanning your hand. Okay? Scanning your fingerprints, your palm print, the unique pattern of your skin. However, and this is why I selected this particular picture, because the blue here is indicative of patterns of nanodiamonds on our skin, and not just on the hand, but our entire body. And therefore, this is your window into the future, because it's not just Amazon making consumerism convenient. It's about identifying you way beyond the folds and the lines in your skin. Okay? So this is going to take us to Hyperledger. Eventually we're going to get to the new blockchain phone. But let's stick to the Hyperledger. I have a paper in front of me I'm going to scan through. I didn't send it to you because it's quite extensive and kind of just makes your eyes glaze over. But this comes from Hyperledger, the blockchain technologies for business. And it's an introduction to Hyperledger, and it is not necessarily written for the scientists, specifically the computer scientists and the software engineers and coders, but for business executives. So I'm going to just take a few pieces out of this. But what I would encourage you to do is, if you have an interest in going deep into this, type in Hyperledger, an introduction to Hyperledger. And you can look at this paper or you can email me and I'll send it to you. Okay? Here's the table of contents. Again, I'm only going to extract a couple of things out of this. Why open source for blockchain? Now, those of you that are familiar with software that is open source, this particular blockchain system that they're advocating is advocating one that is open, meaning easy access, and it can be modified by anyone. The greenhouse. Now, there's a new term for you. The greenhouse. No, we're not talking aquaponics as we did last week. The greenhouse for enterprise blockchain. And I want to apologize. I was referring to Thursday last week. We obviously did not have a live stream Thursday. I should be referencing Wednesday last week. I was talking about, among many things, aquaponics. So I find it humorous that here it is in blockchain, they're talking about the greenhouse for enterprise blockchain. Now, the Hyperledger design philosophy. Some compelling cases. And I'll list these very quickly. Banking, applying for a loan. Financial services, post-trade processing. Healthcare, credentialing physicians. IT, managing portable identities. Supply chain management, tracking fish. There it is again, tracking fish from ocean to table. Their current projects and frameworks, Hyperledger Burrow, and I'm going to pick out a few of these just to highlight them. Fabric, I'm going to talk about Fabric. Hyperledger Indy, I'm going to talk about that. Hyperledger Aurora, and then finally Sawtooth. Some of the tools that they have in Hyperledger are Caliper, Cello, Composer, Explorer, and Quilt. So I just named those just so you know what's in this paper if you decide that you want to go and take a look at this deep dive. Again, let me jump right into I want to go to Hyperledger Fabric, and I do believe I have a diagram for that. We'll talk about Hyperledger Fabric. We're going to define that. Okay, here is Hyperledger with Linux, and Linux is a open source operating system. Most of you are familiar with Linux. It runs about, I think, 90% of the applications out there on phones and computers. They use that as the foundation operating system, Linux open source OS. Underneath that is Hyperledger itself. And down here you'll see that I'm going to talk about Fabric and I'm going to talk about Indy. Okay? Beginning with Fabric, just a quick diagram, and I'll read some details on this. You have a permissioned user, someone who is allowed access to this blockchain system. That's what the Hyperledger is. It's a blockchain system. We've discussed when we introduced blockchain things like permissionless, LESS, permissionless access, and permissioned access. In this case, we're talking about permissioned user. Someone who's already been identified, someone who's been vetted as being allowed to operate in this system. They call this a Fabric client. There's a transaction, which is known as invoking. Now, isn't that interesting terminology from a spiritual context, right? Invoking a contract. So there is an evaluation process, a validating process of peer-to-peer validation of the person who's invoking the contract. Okay? Now, you can also have a transaction here with a Fabric client that also has to be validated. Both of these do, and they go through a validation process. And if it is a valid transaction and a valid permissioned user, or even a non-permissioned, a permissionless system, it would then be validated and entered into one of the blocks in a ledger. Then it is distributed throughout the Hyperledger fabric. Okay? I think I have a more detailed description of that. Let me go through that quickly and then we'll get to Indy. Hyperledger Fabric, the most popular Hyperledger framework. A project that has poured numerous blockchain companies in a single string to develop blockchain applications together is Hyperledger within the Linux Foundation. And this was a project started in 2015. It has a sole objective of encouraging open industrial blockchain development. So to put this in context, what they've done is take the most popular open source operating system of the world and piggyback the blockchain system into it. Now, if you've already established an operating system that is used worldwide, it makes it very easy to then piggyback the infrastructure of the Besta system into that operating system. That's what I'm sharing with you. This is what is applicable to our everyday walk of life. This is the next evolution in that Besta infrastructure that I already introduced to you. Hyperledger is not a company and it is not a cryptocurrency. Okay? This is simply collecting data and distributing it in blocks so as to record it and make it easily accessible. Hyperledger is an open source collaborative effort created to advance cross-industry blockchain technologies. It is a global collaboration hosted by the Linux Foundation, including leaders in finance, banking, Internet of Things, supply chains, manufacturing, and technology. Thanks to Linux Foundation, that has created an environment where groups of software developers and companies sit together and coordinate to create amazingly powerful blockchain frameworks. Linux Foundation started this platform in December of 2015 and announced its first founding members in February of 2016. Just after 1 month of the announcement, 10 new members came up and joined the platform. And presently, Hyperledger has more than 100 members. This sounds very familiar to Libra, folks. Okay, 28 initial members moving up to 100 members. And we'll fold that discussion in later on. Some of the members are Airbus, Daimler, IBM, SAP, Nokia, and Samsung. Okay. Hyperledger Fabric is one of the prominent blockchain projects within Hyperledger. It has a ledger, smart contract, and a system that helps them to manage their transactions. The Hyperledger Fabric is quite different from other blockchain systems as it is private and permissioned. It is mandatory for all members of a Hyperledger Fabric network to log in with the help of a valid membership service provider. However, an open permissionless system permits unknown identities to participate in the network. That was that upper portion of that graphic I was showing you. Let me see if it's still up there. Yeah. So what we're describing is this upper transaction right here. And let me go back and repeat that for you. However, an open permissionless system permits unknown identities to participate in the network, which is, of course, not allowed for any private organization, as confidential information cannot be shared publicly. So what's so special about Hyperledger Fabric? It is designed in such a way so that it helps enterprises to scale their blockchain network to produce more than 1,000 transactions per second. Now I'm going to stop right there again. Parenthetically, I'm going to take you over to Libra again. Libra has always, since its design, and I began reading about Libra in late 2018, okay? We introduced it to you in February of 2019, June of 2019, and so forth through September and October of 2019, Libra. Libra has always been built upon the concept of rapid transactions. This is quite different than cryptocurrency blockchain transactions, which are very slow. They can take a minute to 5 minutes for a transaction to be confirmed. And those transactions are not going to Walmart with your blockchain. We're talking about transactions within the cryptocurrency buying and selling speculative environment itself. Libra has been designed for rapid transactions, 1,000 per second. And that's going to accelerate, folks. This is just the starting point. So this is a much faster system. Remember, I asked you to write down some very specific red letter words as we began talking about Libra. And the primary word in Libra has been transactions. Here we're talking about the speed of transactions at 1,000 per second, which just completely obsoletes cryptocurrency blockchain transactions. But the other important thing about transactions to bear in mind is that the founders, the founding members, are the only ones that have access to those transaction fees. And they will be 1/10 of a cent those transaction fees, meaning that users won't care that there's that tenth of a cent or even smaller fee that's charged for that transaction. But the founders get excited when they see 1,000 transactions per second, but ramping up to trillions of transactions every day. I've labeled this transaction in the trillions per day as the new gold mine for the world. This is a whole new, this isn't a new form of currency, although it is. This is a new form of wealth that is being created in this beast system. A new gold mine of transaction fees. And this is why founding members are more than happy to pay a paltry $10 million to be a member of Libra. So, focus on 1,000 transactions per second, because I know in the coming weeks I'm going to begin to reveal technologies to you that are going to speed those transactions up considerably. You know why? You know how I can say that? Because I know that what is behind blockchain, here's the hint, random number generation. When they talk about with nanodiamonds, and that's tied in, that's physically connecting data using nanodiamonds in Hyperledger. I shared that with you from Dust Identity, tied into Hyperledger, which is the blockchain, nanodiamonds, random distribution of patterns to the 10 to the 230th power of random patterns of distribution of nanodiamonds. What else operates in random number generation, in random patterns? I said it earlier, quantum computers. The blockchain is built, yes, it began in the early 90s, but blockchain today is built out only because of quantum computing. What I'm specifically saying about quantum computing and blockchains is the security that they tout. That's the big carrot that they put out there to sell people on blockchain, to migrate their data like Facebook did, migrating user data into the blockchain because it's secure. Well, how can it be secure? Random number generation. Well, how does quantum computing operate? Random number generation. Random number generation from geomancy, the combinatorial optimization operating system of quantum computing. The only way you can have what they claim to be unhackable encryption of the blockchain and the Hyperledger blockchain system, the only way is to use a quantum computer to produce what man would consider to be an infinite number of combinations, 10 to the 230th power. Okay? I said about that, what appears from man's perspective to be an infinite number, 10 to the 230th power, is what I was saying about Google and their doubling of the integers past the decimal point to what they would consider from a human perspective to be an infinite number. I defined Google's discussion of quantum supremacy and the doubling of the doubling as the mathematical model of the abyss. And Revelation tells us that the angel will be cast from heaven and given the key to the bottomless pit. And that key, as I've defined it, is the private key of encryption, of cryptography. The private key of encryption that unlocks the encrypted information, the encrypted instructions on how to open the doorway to the abyss. Now we see another infinite number, 10 to the 230th power, related to dust identity, the pattern of nanodiamond distribution, connecting physically the diamonds, connecting to the software, to the zeros and ones of data in the Hyperledger Fabric project. Based on random number generation, which is cryptography, which is encryption. And the only way to achieve that level of encryption, of utilizing infinite numbers, infinite combinations, you can only do that with a quantum computer. Therefore, coming full circle in this Hyperledger Fabric discussion, a blockchain network to produce more than 1,000 transactions per second. I said those 1,000 transactions per second will increase exponentially because of quantum computing handling those transactions. This takes us way back into history, talking about when D-Wave quantum computers were building their prototypes. They tested it in the commodity and stock markets, and they interrupted electronic trades, inserted their own position of advantage trade ahead of a trade that they interrupted, and then allowed the original trade to proceed. But their trade is placed ahead of that trade to take advantage and to profit. This is what we're talking about, folks. This is giving you a window into the capabilities of quantum computing, which runs these advanced levels of Hyperledger Fabric blockchain systems. And all of this is tied into Libra as the coming global single currency for the world. All cryptocurrencies and all printed and all minted coin will be obsolete. Gold and silver cast into the streets, worthless. Okay? Let's continue. The Hyperledger Fabric project is primarily based on a special smart contract system which is known as chain code. Yeah, you're going to be chained to this, all right. And every peer operates on Docker containers. Another interesting thing about Hyperledger Fabric is that it allows various enterprises to make parts of the blockchain. All right, so I won't go into the details of all that. You get the gist of it. I want to move on to Indy. And no, this is not Indiana Jones. This is Hyperledger Indy, Blockchain Identity Project. Okay? Okay? Mark of the Beast. Mark of the Beast. It's right there. Hyperledger Indy provides tools, libraries, and reusable components for providing digital identities. Remember, Sentient World Simulation, as I read this, folks, SWS. Providing digital identities rooted on blockchains or other distributed ledgers so that they are interoperable across digital networks, administrative domains, and applications. Folks, if you go to the bank and try to get a home loan, this is what's applicable to you. If you go to buy a car, if you go to open a credit account of any sort, this is what's in it for you, okay? Once an identity is created, the user can even assign a human memorable name for that identity, okay? This is avatar language, folks, from SWS. And SWS has been running since 2007. Once an identity is created, the user can even assign a human memorable name for their identity. On the ledger, the identity name is converted into a unique identity key called DID, decentralized identifiers. Different individual or organizations can communicate with each other using these DIDs. Again, decentralized identifiers. Those are the nodes within the SWS, folks. They're not going to tell you that in this article, but I can tell you because I've been talking about this for years and following its development. A digital identity is the information of an entity used by computer systems to represent an external agent and get recognized in a network. Digital identity provides authorization and authentication factors of a node when a node operates in a network. Again, they're not going to identify that as SWS, as the node. Okay? The real-world example of digital identities are passports, which identifies a person with authenticity. For example, a self-sovereign identity is the concept that people and businesses can control their own identity and their own identity data on their own devices and provide it efficiently to those who need to validate it without relying on a central repository of identity data. So, we can say that self-sovereign identity is a modified version of digital identity, which is decentralized to maximize security. All right, let me break all this down for you. You got the gist of it. The idea here is that you are part of, I'm going to go back on camera here. You are part of this blockchain. You are given permission to operate in this blockchain. Once you've been identified, once you've been validated, once you've been vetted, and if you have contributed your personal information into the blockchain system willingly, but if third parties like your automobile dealer, your hospital, your home mortgage lender, whatever it may be, they're putting data in about you as well. You go to Amazon Go and you have your hand scanned and you go in and you purchase your items and it's automatically deducted from your account. You never have to have a card, credit card or debit card. That's all data going into the blockchain about you. Now, if you want to access that, and let's say you invested in Libra cryptocurrencies. Forget about all the other cryptocurrencies because they're not transactional. Okay? They're for speculative purposes. But Libra is designed for transactions. So you go out and buy a bunch of Libra. And we're not talking mark of the beast yet. I'm just talking about in the early stages, which is this year. They said Libra would be unrolled, if you will. It will be presented for the public to have access and purchase Libra cryptocurrencies sometime in the first half of 2020. So it's coming. So here's the deal. Let's say you had some funds to invest in Libra. And at some point, you want to access those funds, that cryptocurrency. You want to use your Libra for a transaction. Maybe you saved them up and you're going to go buy a car. But it is now in God's timeline, it is now time for that mark of the beast decision to take place. You want access to your wealth. You want access to your personal data. Let's take another example. You go to the hospital. You have an urgent or even emergent need. There's a mark of the beast decision that is coming. I don't know when in the timeline. I don't know when it will be in the circumstances of your life, what the scenario is. But there will be a point in which that decision has to be made. And if it's in the discussion of access to your wealth, there's that greed factor. And it doesn't have to be greed. It can be a necessity factor to access Libra. But someone says, hold on a minute. We need to validate you. We need to vet you before we're going to give you permission. This is why I've been giving you all this language, all of this lingo, folks, because this is the scenario. Before we give you permission to access this Hyperledger Fabric blockchain system, you have to be identified. But there's a new layer of identity. It's no longer scanning the hand. It's no longer scanning the nanodiamonds in a unique pattern on your body, embedded in your skin. No, now there's another layer to this identification process of you to grant you permission. See, they use this language because it's spiritual. Permission. No man may buy or sell unless they have the mark. You have to have permission to buy and sell. This is why they call it permissioned access to the blockchain, because it's spiritual. And if a person says, okay, I'll take the mark. I need to go buy a car. I need to go have an operation in the hospital. I'll take the mark. That's the end of their soul. Soul is damned to perdition for all eternity. We know that. We're trying to warn people. Try to warn people through showing the technology. People are so tuned into technology today, but what we do is take the 180 of the technology and say, here's the truth, here's what's behind it, here's the application of the technology that you're so in love with, that you're so connected with, you're so tuned in, you're so focused on, you're so distracted by, you're so deceived by. We flip that technology that you're using around and say, look at its origin and its application. Specifically, this is what it means to your soul. What's in it for me? What does this impact have on my everyday walk of life? It impacts your soul. Can't get any simpler than that. Okay? Trying to build a case here, folks. Trying to build a case. Okay. Let's move on from that. Let's do something a little bit lighter. I sent this article to you. The world's first true blockchain phone is secure and decentralized to the core. The first blockchain phone call took place last October with a prototype developed by Function X, a new decentralized internet service framework. Now the prototype has been refined and is nearly ready for public release. Let me step aside, folks. What I'm sharing with you, we've been talking about. We've said this is coming. They've got us so tuned into our phones, so dependent, and our phones are so convenient. Think about that as I continue reading this. The new prototype has been refined and is nearly ready for public release. The phone is dubbed, in quotations, Bob, B-O-B, which stands for Block on Block. spelled B-L-O-K, block. Bob will be compatible with Android 9.0, and users will be able to switch between Android and blockchain modes on their phones. Can you even imagine your phone tied to the blockchain? Well, I've been warning you. Bob has its own blockchain operating system called FunctionX. When Bob is set to blockchain mode, every bit of data sent through the phone is executed through a blockchain, which makes Bob the first truly blockchain-powered phone in the world. You see, folks, they have set up the phones to be that portal into the blockchain beast system infrastructure. You'll recall about a year ago, I let you know that Google was distributing for free to so-called third world countries Google phones for free. Then I followed that up months later and I said that we began talking about Libra and the unbanked of the world, and the underbanked of the world, representing about a third of the world's population, the unbanked, and that it was for Libra to make it convenient, to make it easy for them to then be connected to the banking system, specifically connecting through Libra. And now you see, free phones. Some people, when President Obama was in office, they talked about Obama phones. Remember? The phone is set to be the portal into the blockchain for every person on the planet. Okay? When a user sends a text message or makes a call using Bob, the message or call is transmitted through the blockchain rather than a centralized mobile carrier. This gives users complete control and ownership over their data and saves costs by cutting out the middleman. There's your spin, okay? There's your carrot. Let's 180 that, folks. This gives users complete control and ownership of their data. No, it doesn't. You remember what I've said in the basic definition of blockchain? The basic selling point was they would say that it is distributed ledgers, that it was decentralized information, that your contracts, your data is replicated thousands of times and distributed so that if someone tried to hack into that system and destroy your data, there's so many copies of your data, so many copies of your contracts, of your home loan, of your automobile loan, of your credit card information, that a hacker could never destroy every copy. Okay, that sounds benevolent, but the malevolent of it is that I've defined for you is that because this is driven by quantum computing encryption, it is not decentralized distribution. Rather, it is centralized encryption. What it means is, okay, there's thousands of copies and they can't be hacked, so that's decentralized. I'll give them that. However, what they don't tell you, and I've told you for over a year now, maybe 2 years now, is that it is actually centralized because there's only one holder of the private key of the encryption system that encrypts all of your data. Therefore, it is centralized within a quantum computer system. And then the question you have to ask is, well, then who controls the quantum computers that are running the encryption, that hold the private key to that encryption, to that coding? Who holds the control to the quantum computers? Well, ultimately, it's the Antichrist, plain and simple, because it's his infrastructure that he is building right now. So you can 180 this sentence. This gives users complete control and ownership over their data and saves costs by cutting out the middleman. No, it doesn't. You don't have complete control over your data. Someone else does. And yeah, there might be a cost savings in cutting out the middleman, but what's the true cost? It's your soul. That's the 180 of this sentence, folks. Let's continue. In lieu of a centralized service provider, the blockchain is powered by individual Bobs. Every phone will function as a node in the blockchain. That's you, folks. You're represented as a node if you take the mark. Well, we already are. Okay, independent of the mark, we are already represented as a node since 2007. This means Bob owners can contribute to the functioning and development of the Function X ecosystem just by using their mobile phone. See how they sprinkle those little words in there that were all programmed as warm and fuzzy words? Ecosystem, now greenhouse, hyperledger, fabric. All sounds warm and fuzzy. Nothing here. Don't worry about it. It's an ecosystem. How does Bob run independently without the need for a centralized service provider? Phone calls and messages are routed via blockchain nodes without the need for phone numbers. Okay, so I'm not going to read the rest of this. I sent it to you. But let's go back to this discussion of nodes, because we are each represented in the software of the sentient world simulation. That came out of Purdue University as a white paper in 2006 and has been worldwide since 2007. Palantir Software, third-party application developer for D-Wave quantum computers. Palantir, sentient world simulation. Okay? I've given you all that background in the past. Palantir runs, for example, you'll recall Donald Trump going to Saudi Arabia and the threat assessment center that they opened in Saudi Arabia, and the prince was there, and they did the ribbon cutting, and they had their hands on the crystal ball, which is the crystal ball of Palantir software. What they didn't tell you there in Saudi Arabia with President Trump was not only was it Palantir software, which was fairly obvious because of the crystal ball of Palantir, but they didn't tell you that threat center in Saudi Arabia is running off a quantum computer provided by D-Wave Corporation. But that's not in the article. That comes from me. Yeah, I'm sounding like I'm full of myself, but I'm telling you the source of the information. It's D-Wave that's behind that. D-Wave is behind Palantir. They are working together. Palantir helps people to gain through the cloud access to D-Wave's quantum computers without having to spend $10 to $15 million to buy a quantum computer. You can rent computer time. Just like when I was in college at Berkeley, you had computer time on a mainframe computer that filled a room. Nothing different here, folks. Okay, it's just through the cloud. Computer time, quantum computer time. Anyway, Palantir software runs the sentient world simulation. D-Wave quantum computers run the sentient world simulation. We are all 7+ billion people on the planet, even the underbanked and the unbanked, are all connected in that software system from Palantir that runs the SWS. And in that software, we are a node. And now you're seeing through Hyperledger that we are given an avatar. We are given a human memorable name. See, they won't let me use Anthony Patch. No, I have to have an avatar name. Okay? But now we're going to use our phones to access the blockchain, the Hyperledger, the next level up of blockchain discussion. And Hyperledger Indy will identify us. And Hyperledger Fabric will let us put in our data and connect to our data using our phones. You don't have to go through Verizon anymore. You just go directly to the blockchain. That's the third-party middleman they were talking about. You use the app in the phone. And it is that app in the phone that will not only connect you to Libra, but all of the data. But you will only be given permission to access certain data and certain nodes. You're not going to be able to call up President Trump on your Bob phone because you won't have permission for that access. But they'll tell you that you can call anyone in the world that's in this blockchain. They'll sell it to you that way, but it's restricted access. And you thought GPS was tracking you? You thought that was bad? Don't worry about GPS tracking. You're already being tracked in the simulation. The nanodiamonds we're talking about is an enhancement to that. Because think about what the nanodiamonds do. Besides being scannable, either with a microwave system or the laser system, not only the pattern, but remember edge computing? Computing taking place at the origination point of that data, the uptake of that data. That's what nanodiamonds do. That's what dust identity is about. Those diamonds are sensors. Those diamonds can take in information and retransmit it. Remember what I said about the nitrogen vacancy voids within the nanodiamonds? They can take in information and they can transmit information. They are transceivers. That happens at the edge where the data originates. That's why the diamonds are sensors. And they have a limited computational ability at that edge of the Internet of all things. And then because they've taken information and computed it, they can more efficiently and make better use of the available bandwidth, more efficiently transmit through the cloud that information they, as diamond sensors, have been able to obtain. This is why we're already, forget about GPS, that's buggy whip, that's horse and buggy nonsense. Don't even think about GPS anymore. Why do you think there are programs like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos launching satellites, geosynchronous satellites, in the hundreds around the planet? It's for this sentient world simulation system. It is for these nanodiamonds. It is for the Bob cell phones accessing the blockchain. It's for the tracking, and they'll sell it to you as convenience, as money saving, as an ecosystem, that it's all warm and friendly and fuzzy and don't worry about it. Don't do a 180 with it. Don't look at it as a beast. It's just a little teddy bear. Okay. I can't see all of my labels in this program, so I apologize. I have to dig through here a little bit. There it is. This is, and this was earlier this year, I shared this with you, but it's germane to what we're about to launch into. This is the first photograph of 2 photons, and it's been color enhanced. It's normally a black and white, but 2 photons that are quantum entangled. So I'm going to leave that up there. Photograph of entangled quantum particles, photons. Now, this is from January 17th, from Futurism, and then I'm going to go to the paper itself. The title is Scientists Create Strange Metal Packed with Entangled Electrons, not photons this time, but electrons. This could be the key to creating quantum technologies. An international team of researchers has created what's called a strange metal, and they say it could help harness the potential of the quantum world in a practical way. Specifically, the metal provides evidence for the quantum entanglement nature of quantum criticality. But that's a lot to unpack. So let's start with something most of us probably learned in elementary school: phase transitions. We see evidence of classical phase transitions all the time. The ice in our drinks melts into a liquid at a certain temperature. For example, while the water we boil evaporates into a gas at another. That's a phase transition. Well, materials in the quantum world also undergo phase transitions under the right conditions. And when a quantum material is capable of transitioning from one phase to another, it's called a state of quantum criticality. Which brings us back to a new study published this week in the journal Science. The researchers used the elements ytterbium, that's ytterbium, ytterbium, rhodium, and silicon to create a, quote, strange metal, a type of metal in which the electrons act as a unit rather than independently like they would in a regular metal, such as copper or gold. So let me just parenthetically say, when electrons act as a unit, that means that their spin is uniform. It's the same direction. It's like the compass needle analogy that I always use for the spin of quantum particles. But specifically, when you're talking about electrons, we're talking about magnetism. A magnet simply means that the electrons are all aligned in the same direction. The compass needle of the electrons, its spin, is all uniform. It's in the same direction. So that's what they're saying here when the electrons act as a unit rather than independently. Okay, let's go through this. When at the lowest temperature theoretically possible, absolute zero, or negative 273.15 degrees Celsius, or negative 459.67 degrees Fahrenheit, they're defining absolute zero there, the team's strange metal undergoes a transition from a quantum phase in which it forms a magnetic order to another phase in which it doesn't. Okay? While conducting experiments in ultra-pure films made from the metal, the team noticed quantum entanglement. Now get this, folks, this is interesting. The team noticed quantum entanglement among billions of electrons. I sound like Carl Sagan. Billions of electrons in it. Let me just jump right ahead. I'm just giving my reaction to that statement when I was reading this with Kathleen. Kathleen actually was reading it to me. She was excited about this article. We're a couple of geeks here, but when I see quantum entanglement among billions and billions of electrons, and I compare that to the largest quantum processor that we know of, and that is produced by D-Wave. They're about to announce this year a 5,000 qubit quantum computer. By comparison, Google and the whole quantum supremacy discussion was 54 qubits, okay? But 5,000 qubits compared to billions and billions of electrons. You see, qubits use electrons. They move in opposite directions through the superconducting wire, which is niobium, which is cooled to just a few percentage points above absolute zero. Okay? A couple of negative degrees above millikelvins above absolute zero is what they cool niobium wire to that temperature so that it becomes superconducting. What it means is it frees up the electrons to move in opposite directions simultaneously, producing superposition of zeros and ones within the quantum chipset. But we're only talking 5,000 qubits. Yes, the qubits have thousands upon thousands of electrons, but not billions and billions of electrons. This is why it jumped off the page at me. The best quantum computer only uses thousands upon thousands. I can't give you an exact number, but it's in the thousands of electrons. Now we're talking about billions upon billions, an exponential increase in the number of entangled particles, electrons. What that translates to is the ability to create qubits, quantum bits, quantum processors containing exponentially larger numbers of quantum entangled fundamental particles. You can do it with photons, as this picture illustrates to you. And I know that that's where D-Wave has been doing the bulk of their research and development, is away from electrons and going to qubits based on photons. But they're not publicly bringing that out. They're not bringing it out in the journals like Science. Okay? But whether we're talking electrons or photons, it's in the numbers of fundamental particles that are entangled that increases the speed of the quantum processor and the size of the problem that you are processing. I talked about this last Wednesday. Combinatorial optimization, the larger the computer, the larger the number of qubits, the larger the problem comprised of larger numbers. This is why Google was getting all excited about their quantum supremacy and their processor running an infinite number of integers after the decimal point. What that translates to is that they were able to process larger problems and do it faster at Google. This is what it means at D-Wave. This is what it means when they talk about billions and billions of electrons, is bigger problems comprised of larger groups of numbers faster. Now, if they would only apply this in a benevolent fashion, we could solve all the problems of the world very quickly. But they won't do that. Why? Because the technology itself comes from Satan himself. Geomancy. Okay? So, continue with the article. It asked the question, so why is this observation important? Well, I already told you why it is, but they won't tell you what I just said. It could help in efforts to create quantum technologies. Quantum entanglement is the basis for storage and processing of quantum information. At the same time, quantum criticality is believed to drive high temperature superconductivity. I'm going to stop right there. High temperature superconductivity. Last week, when I introduced this cage, this carbon boron cage with strontium trapped within the cage, these were being touted as super diamonds. Okay? The discussion around this is the phase I presented this to you on Wednesday. The phase transition of these cages. Now we're talking about it with this discovery that's just been announced. I preceded this for you last Wednesday. It just came out 2 days ago in Science Journal. Phase transition. What I presented to you about this on Wednesday was room temperature superconductivity in a quantum processor, in a qubit. You don't have to cool the superconducting wire, niobium, down to a few millikelvins above absolute zero. You don't have to do that. You don't have to have a pulse dilution refrigeration system. You can run the quantum computer at room temperature, and you can run it faster, and you can run bigger mathematical problems at room temperature. This is what I presented in 2014 in 2048 Diamonds in the Rough, my second novel, room temperature quantum computing. Room temperature quantum computing is a whole new ballgame, folks. It changes everything. But it's not going to be benevolent. Do you remember the 600 cell tetrahedron? This is my model of the universe. It's also my model for a universal computer. This is the universal computer in my second novel published in 2014. Room temperature quantum computer using nanodiamonds. This is what they're talking about right here. This is what they're talking about. Quantum information and high temperature superconductivity. When one contemplates that possibility, they're saying in the article, one cannot help but marvel at the wonder of nature. Well, the marvel of nature is God's creation of the universe using tetrahedrons. This is what the universe looks like. Plain and simple. Room temperature superconductivity. This is the actual article coming out of Rice University News and Media Relations, Office of Public Affairs. Study finds billions of quantum entangled electrons in, quote, strange metal, January 16. And then in Science magazine, it came out in 2017. Okay. Let me pick out some new information out of this, out of the actual article. With strange metals, there is an unusual connection between electrical resistance and temperature. In contrast to simple metals such as copper or gold, and I would add niobium, this does not seem to be due to the thermal movement of the atoms, but to the quantum fluctuations at absolute zero temperature. Now, I'm going to skip through some of this stuff here. At a magnetic quantum critical point, conventional wisdom dictates that only the spin sector will be critical. But if the charge and the spin sectors are quantum entangled, the charge sector will end up being critical as well. Let me translate that for you. The quantum entanglement allows a change in both particles, and that change to occur instantaneously, no time delay. So when they are talking about a phase change, what they're talking about is one particle is able to change the phase of its pair, of its partner, through quantum entanglement. It doesn't rely on temperature. It relies on entanglement for phase change. The example of ice melting into water and water being heated to a gas as a phase change. Imagine those things happening without temperature. No involvement of temperature, no heating, no cooling, simply quantum entanglement. And when they talk about phase, they're talking about the spin of those fundamental particles. The spin of one particle being changed instantaneously changes the spin of the other. This is the essence of quantum computing, where you have, for example, a downward spin representing 0 and an upward spin representing 1. If you change the 0, the down spin, to an up spin, you change the up spin of the partner to a down spin. This is the 0 and 1 relationship, the binary relationship in quantum entanglement. This is the essence of quantum computing. The change from 0 to 1. Same thing in software in classical transistor computers. No difference. But the difference here that is so exciting is that it can involve billions of quantum entangled particles, all changing spins simultaneously. That's a speed up in quantum computational speed. Not only in the number of particles, numbering in the billions, but the fact that they are all changing their spin, their phase, at the same time. Okay? So that's unpacking some of the real technical jargon that's embedded in this. That's what's in it for us. What's in it for us, if we take the mark of the beast, is we're controlled by that system. Billions of quantum entangled electrons or photons operating right now at a speed that we can't even comprehend. But look at this development here with this strange material, strange metals. To me, it speaks of the nearness of the return of Jesus Christ. For these kinds of capabilities, which are representative of forbidden knowledge, forbidden to protect us, that knowledge was kept from us. But how is it being accessed? For new patrons, how is it being accessed? It's being accessed through quantum computers. Quantum computers are divinatory tools, instruments. Divination is not only divining the future, foretelling the future, but divination, in its true definition, is interdimensional communication. And who are they communicating with? Humans using quantum computers. Who are they communicating with? Fallen angels. Who's providing the forbidden information? It's not God, because he forbade the information. He forbade the conveyance of that information to us for our protection. Therefore, by definition, if it is not coming from God, it is coming from Satan and his fallen angels. It's very simple. This is not a complex scenario. This has been done by the alchemists all through history. This has been done by the Ramon Lulls and the Aleister Crowleys. This has been done by the John Dee and the Edward Kelly. And many before them, all the way back to 3500 BC into Mesopotamia and all across Africa and into China. And 1400 years ago it began in China, long after it began in Mesopotamia. Accessing forbidden knowledge by communicating divination through geomancy in the ancient and quantum computers in the contemporary time. But again, the quantum computers are nothing more than a more advanced form of the geomantic practice of making random dots in the sand to then be interpreted by a skilled diviner. And that diviner is interpreting it because they are in communication with fallen angels who have taught them. If you look at the background of John Dee and Edward Kelly, they were taught by the angels that they were communicating with. They learned the Enochian language, the language of the angels, the Enochian alphabet, so that they could communicate. And they received mathematical information that resulted in the geometric alchemy. Because when you know the geometric construct of the elements, which they learned from the angels, you can then reconstruct the geometry. You can change the geometry of those elements, which is the essence of alchemy. So coming to the contemporary, and we talk about quantum computers today, I always go back and I access and I relate to you, which I've related hundreds of times probably, the words of one of the founders of D-Wave, Dr. Geordie Rose, back in 2013 and then in 2015, but in 2013, and I repeated and cited to publicly in 2015 and subsequent to that, his words regarding the 512 qubit quantum computer, that they were accessing, by his own words, accessing 2 to the 500th power, 2 to the 500th power of parallel dimensions. Replace the word dimension and instead use the word demons. 2 to the 500th power of demons, fallen angels that they are communicating with. And he said if we are smart enough, if we are clever enough, we can extract resources from what he called parallel dimensions. That extracting of resources, that translates to forbidden knowledge. And now we've moved from 512 qubits to this year it will be 5,000 qubits. Now we're seeing in this article the ability at room temperature to achieve superconductivity by way of the quantum entanglement at room temperature of billions and billions of electrons. Jesus is coming back very soon because of this. Too much forbidden knowledge has been conveyed to man through this divinatory process of advanced geomancy, of interdimensional communication. This is stretching the patience of God our Father. This is stretching the patience of Jesus Christ, who is, euphemistically I'll say, chomping at the bit to come back in judgment. We know he wants to come back and put a stop to this. What I'm sharing with you tonight technologically, again, bolsters the case, reinforces the case that the time is very near for his return. Each of these advancements that keep pushing, we have a cell phone that can communicate with the Besta system, the blockchain, the hyperledger. We have nanodiamonds that can uniquely identify us and serve to function as the physical mark of the beast on the body subsequent to the third strand of DNA replication process internally, which then renders us no longer a creation of God, but a creation of Satan. And he doesn't create anything. He only counterfeits that which God has already created, including the DNA. So you see the beast system, you see its infrastructure, you see the advancements of it, you see the quantum computer control systems, its encryption. You see the communication system, you see the one world currency of Libra. The Antichrist is very soon to be revealed to the world. He is alive and well right now, and he soon will be identified. We've given you some hints. Okay? We've given you some hints. We don't know for sure. It's our best educated conjecture that we've shared with you. In our discussions and publishing in Entangled magazine about Concordia and the Logothets back in the 12th century, earning 12% on every transaction. Nothing new under the sun. Because the Logothets of the past are the Logothets of the present, who are behind the one world global currency of Libra within the beast system. You have all the components, and there are probably more that will be revealed through the Holy Spirit, and we will share those. Because it is all glory to God, and it is all credit to the Holy Spirit and Jesus Christ through prayer, sharing this with Kathleen and sharing it with me. And the two of us put our heads together, and then we present this to you. These are all tools and resources for you to witness with. Okay?